Okay, let's unpack this. You've brought us some truly fascinating source material today.
Yeah, it's this overview of something called motion theory.
And right up front, it's clear this isn't just, a minor tweak on physics. It's pretty radical.
That's right. The source is basically one big document, chapter by chapter, laying out these fundamental ideas.
It seems to cover everything.
It really tries to, a unified framework from the very beginning of reality right up to consciousness, even quantum mechanics.
So our mission here is to really dig into these core claims. What's it actually saying? And how does it redefine things we thought we, understood, like time, space, matter itself?
Yeah.
Because it starts right off saying the universe isn't built from particles or forces or even time, but fundamentally from motion.
Exactly. Not just, stuff moving around.
No, motion is the stuff. Motion is the space. That's the baseline.
And what's so interesting is how it just flips the script on conventional physics.
Right.
Instead of particles and forces acting in spacetime, motion theory says motion is the absolute base, the foundation.
There's always wise, always will be.
That's the claim. It's the fundamental stage, or maybe medium, that everything else comes from.
So motion first. But how does anything else, emerge just from motion?
Well, the source talks about an origin story, not the Big Bang, like an explosion in space.
Something different.
It calls it the Great Motion Event. It's framed more like structured rhythm emerging out of just raw, unstructured motion potential.
Like when symmetry broke.
That's the idea. And the crucial part, according to the source, is that this event wasn't creation in space or time.
It was the beginning.
It was the beginning of motion getting structure, a loop closing, a rhythm starting.
Yeah.
And that act, that first structured motion, brought energy and identity into being.
Ah, okay.
And from that first loop, everything else unfolded. It's like motion differentiating itself, organizing into forms.
Motion creating form. Okay, that's a big concept. Let's jump to one of the really mind-bending claims then. Time isn't real.
Huh, yeah. What does that even mean, right?
What does the source mean by that?
It's pretty direct. It says there's no universal clock just ticking away.
So what is time then?
It's presented as just how we measure motion, how we compare different motions.
How? Is there a mechanism?
It defines it like this. Time equals the resolution rate of motion loops. Basically, everything, a particle, a planet, a cell, has its own internal rhythm, its own sync rate, the source calls it.
And the source gives examples, right? Like everyday things.
Yeah, like a rock eroding, a planet spinning.
Your heart beating, a neuron firing.
Exactly. Those things don't happen in time. They are the motion whose rhythm creates our perception of time passing. They're just cycles.
Local cycles?
Local, relative cycles of motion. And if you think about relativity, time dilation.
Yeah.
The source says that isn't time stretching. It's motion desynchronization.
Desynchronization.
Yeah, the rate motion loops resolve is just different in different frames, different speeds, different environments.
Wow. Okay. So gravity, it doesn't warp space-time to affect time.
According to this, no. Gravity creates denser motion environments.
Denser motion.
Maybe more complexity, more synchronized loops packed together. And in those denser zones, the loops just resolve differently. Slower from our outside perspective. It's all about the local motion.
That really is a total shift. Okay, so time is how we measure motion loops. What about space? We think of it as empty mostly.
Right, the vacuum. But the source says, nope, not empty. It's full of motion potential. It acts like a medium.
Why? What is it then?
The definition given is a field of low-density structured motion.
An ocean of sync.
That's a good way to put it, yeah, an ocean of sync. Potential motion is always there, flickering, interacting. Even emptiness is brimming with this low-level structure. It is the medium.
And this just changes everything else. Gravity, for instance. It's not a pull.
Correct. Reinterpreted as convergence toward higher synchronization density.
So things aren't pulled.
They just naturally move towards areas where the motion is denser or more synchronized, like finding the center of a whirlpool, maybe. Not being pulled by a rope.
And light. It doesn't travel through this medium.
The source says light is a self-resolving structured loop bouncing through the medium of motion.
So light is a pattern in the motion.
Exactly. A pattern that keeps itself going, propagating by handing off its rhythm, its phase, through the background motion. Motion being light.
Not just carrying it. Okay. And quantum fields, those complex things.
Defined as zones of rhythmic potential. Places in the motion medium where certain rhythms are more likely to stabilize into loops or maybe flicker out.
Potential structures.
Yeah, potential resolving into something identifiable.
This is dense. But it's starting to form a weird kind of picture, grounded in motion. So if space is structured motion, what about the stuff in space? Particles, get this, the source says there are no actual things, no particles.
That's maybe the most radical bit. What we call particles, electrons, protons, they aren't tiny bits of matter.
What are they then?
Loop structures, or resonant patterns of motion stabilized into identity. Persistent, stable configurations of motion.
So an electron, it's not a tiny ball.
According to this source, no. It's a stable, repeating motion loop. High sync retention. It holds its rhythm really well.
And a proton, more complex.
A complex, nested loop structure made of quark-level rhythmic patterns converging.
And a photon, light particle.
A transient ripple. A motion loop that travels by passing its phase along. A quick handoff of rhythm.
So they're fundamentally just modes of motion.
That's the term used, yes. Not matter that moves, but forms that are motion, like knots or waves in this motion medium.
And this thinking extends to everything. Mass, force, fields.
Absolutely. Mass isn't intrinsic, it's motion resistance.
How hard it is to change the loop's state.
Basically, yes. Force isn't a push or pull, it's differential motion pressure. Gradients making patterns shift.
And fields, like magnetic fields.
Just gradients in motion synchronization. Patterns in the local sync rate that influence other loops.
Yeah.
Everything we've named, gravity, magnetism chart, it's all just structured behavior of motion loops.
Okay, so if all that physical stuff is just patterns of motion, what about life? Something complex, seemingly solid.
The theory sees life as a particularly sophisticated dynamic form of motion.
How so?
It defines life as self-sustaining motion.
Meaning
complex networks of motion loops that don't just resolve and fade, they feed back on themselves.
they keep going.
They recycle energy, adapt their structures, their rhythms to persist, to reproduce. Life is an adaptive network of structured motion loops that sustain and reproduce resolution. Loops fighting that tendency to desync.
Wow, so thinking biologically, DNA, is that a loop too?
Described as a spiral loop, yeah, with built-in sync inheritance.
I get a recipe.
The pattern for forming other loops is embedded in its structure, passed down.
Okay, this gets abstract. Thought, memory, emotion, also emotion.
Within this framework, yes. Thought is described as electrical motional sync weaving through complex loop hierarchies.
Brain activity patterns.
Intricate coordinated synchronization patterns. Emotion is called resonance drift, like shifts in the sync between different systems in us.
And memory.
Sync residue. Lingering patterns. Echoes of past motion states.
And consciousness itself.
Defined as recursive loop awareness of past and present. Some kind of self-referential motion pattern aware of its own state. These are definitely some of the more interpretive concepts in the source.
Yeah, definitely. And the source makes that specific claim about humans, right?
That we're the only species aware of our own motion zone.
Which we labeled time.
Yeah. It suggests our self-awareness let us see the cycles, sun, moon, breath, heartbeat, and abstract them into this idea of linear time. We saw our own motion resolving, gave it a name.
Okay, zooming back out to the universe level. Is it winding down? Heat death? Standard model stuff?
The source gives a fundamentally different picture. Not winding down, it's refining, tuning itself.
So entropy. It isn't just increasing chaos.
Reinterpreted as motion rebalancing.
Yeah.
Sure, where loops desync, energy dissipates back into potential. But, and this is key, where motion converges, finds new stable rhythms, new structures form.
So it's dynamic.
A continuous dynamic equilibrium, not just sliding into disorder.
So reality is self-organizing structured motion.
Precisely. Constantly finding better sync, more stability, better flow. It's like
Learning.
an evolution, not random mutation and selection.
Reframed as sync optimization. Not pure chance, but reality exploring, finding more efficient, stable, adaptive ways for loops to organize.
Smarter loops.
Every species, every physical system is reality learning how to loop smarter, faster through adaptation.
Which brings it back to us again, the source says we're loops inside loops.
Distant feedback systems.
Resolving through the same fundamental rhythms as stars.
Yeah, we're just intricate parts of that universal tuning process. Different scale, different complexity.
Okay, one last big area. Quantum mechanics, all that weirdness.
Sure.
How does this motion theory explain that? Well, the source basically argues QM wasn't some separate reality. It was us interacting with the underlying motion medium. But without realizing, it was motion.
So the weird effects are just motion behaving.
Motion resolving across unstable synchronization states. That's the phrase used.
Like the double-slit experiment. Particle goes through both slits unless you look.
The source calls that a feedback collapse. Observing it interacting with the loop forces its fuzzy, vibrating state into a definite resolution, a definite path,
An entanglement, linked particles.
described as rhythm coherence across space. Their underlying motion patterns stay synced, even far apart.
And the uncertainty principle. Can't know position and momentum precisely.
That's loop ambiguity in a system mid-resolution. The loop is just inherently fluid, uncertain, until it resolves.
So the claim is, quantum weirdness wasn't weirdness, it was just our first glimpse of reality's engine, motion loops adapting.
Yes. Our first kind of confusing encounter with the raw motion medium before understanding it was the foundation.
Okay, wow. Let's try and recap this whole radical rethink from the source. Universe is pure motion.
Fundamentally.
Time is just our measurement of motion's sync rate.
How fast loops resolve.
Space isn't empty, it is structured motion.
A low-density field of it.
Particles aren't things, they're stable motion loops.
Modes of motion.
Life is self-sustaining, adaptive motion loop.
Complex networks.
And the universe isn't dying, it's refining itself, tuning.
Through sync optimization.
With quantum mechanics being our first accidental encounter with this motion reality.
That about covers the core redefinitions, yeah.
The source's conclusion then is, motion is everything. All else is echo.
Pretty much. You don't need time to exist or mass to matter.
Mm-hmm.
You just need structure, sync, feedback within the motion.
It really asks you to shift how you see everything. Like, look at your hand.
And see synchronized loops resolving into that shape.
Look at the star.
And see structured motion resolving across vast distances right into your awareness. Now.
And the source leaves us with that final thought to chew on, doesn't it?
Yeah. You are motion in motion. Everything is in motion adapting forever. What else can it be? Nothing. That's all it actually can be when you truly think about it.
So what does it mean for you to be motion in motion? How does your unique sync resolve?
And it tosses in that final curveball, mentioning enjoying the AI robot motion stage that's about to begin.
Yeah, what does that mean in this context? Definitely something to ponder.
For sure.
Well, a huge thank you to you, our listener, for sending in the source material for this. Well, this really mind-bending deep dive into motion theory.